The total collapse of our food and energy systems is dangerously close. And it is safe to say that once it happens, the world will never be the same. Unfortunately, most people have no idea of the challenges we are going to face over the next weeks and months. Many Americans are still thinking that their lives will still go on as normal because the conflicts that recently erupted are on the other side of the globe. They have no idea about just how much their lives are going to be affected by the disruptions brought on by this tragic event. Virtually everything we buy and consume here in the United States is going to be impacted by this crisis. And we're not just talking about exports. Domestic production is going to be hit hard by a series of factors that are completely out of our control at this point. Way before this confrontation between Russia and Ukraine broke out, we were already struggling with the worst energy crisis since the 1970s. The energy industry powers up every single industry out there. It is the very foundation of our entire system. And the fact that both countries are amongst the biggest producers of energy in the entire globe means that the rest of the world is in deep trouble. Energy markets are being thrown into further turmoil, and energy prices are reaching unprecedented highs. On top of that, we must remember that the world was already suffering the worst food crisis in modern history. Food supplies are still getting tighter and tighter with each passing month. To make things even worse, Russia and Ukraine are large exporters of grains and oils, and of course, the escalating conflict is going to change that. This is the beginning of a terrifying breakdown of our food and energy systems, and that's going to affect every man, woman, and child on the entire planet. But before we go deeper into today's discussion, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up for this video and subscribe to our channel to keep tuned with the latest news. Now, to understand how much our lives are going to be shaken by this global strife, first let's start by taking a look at the consequences this crisis will have on food supplies. Given that the two countries in conflict are the world's largest producers of several types of grains and vegetable oils, the aggression is pushing food prices to skyrocket. And in the United States, that spike is going to be particularly sharp. Analysts said in an interview with the Washington Post that the disruptions could drag on for months or even years, as crop production in the area could be halted and take a long time to restart. This new inflation shock comes at a time when global markets remain extremely strained because of the virus health crisis-related disruptions. The price changes impacted commodity prices in recent days and could flow through to higher costs at U.S. grocery stores and restaurants soon. Now, with commodity and energy prices climbing higher, it is getting increasingly more expensive to plant and to ship grains around the globe at a time that consumer demand continues to grow at levels not seen since March 2020. Supply chains remain extremely strained. There is no slack in the system, making weathering disruption significantly more difficult. For the past 2 years, food inflation has pushed millions of poor families at the bottom of the economic food chain into hunger, and that trend is likely to accelerate since Russia and Ukraine together produce almost 1/4 of the world's wheat, feeding billions of people in the form of bread, pasta, and packaged foods. The countries are key suppliers of wheat, barley, sunflower seed oil, and corn, among other products, the analysts highlighted. According to Kelly Gugary, the senior research analyst at Grow Intelligence, an agriculture data platform, collectively, Russia and Ukraine usually account for 29% of all wheat exports and 75% of global exports of sunflower oil. So, if exports from the two countries are reduced or completely cut off, how is the rest of the planet going to replace that output? Have you ever considered what's going to happen if the world faces a sweeping shortage of grains? That's what Kyle Holland, a pricing analyst covering oilseeds and grains at Mintech, a company that analyzes food commodity price data, has asked in a recent interview. He said, "If you can't buy from Ukraine and Russia, where do you turn to for supply? We don't really know the answer. We are already in the middle of a worldwide shortage of vegetable oils." Guguri explained that a loss of Ukrainian and Russian sunflower oil will drive up the prices for soybean oil, palm oil, and other vegetable oils at a time when the U.S. is using most of its domestically sourced vegetable oils in cleaner burning biofuels. There will be significant disruption. There is already a blockade on Black Sea ports, she continued. In the near term, this should have a major impact on the United States. Moreover, American Bakers Association President Rob McKee warned that consumers will start seeing rising prices in anything that has grain in it because the grain markets are all tied to each other. In essence, this means we will be paying much higher prices for bread, beer, cereal, animal feed, among other things, which will impact billions of dollars worth of products. In a situation where the whole supply chain is already stressed, if the conflict goes on more than a couple of weeks, you'll start to see food prices spinning out of control, he predicted. In our previous videos, we've discussed how global agricultural production is going to slow down all over the planet in 2022 because fertilizer prices have started to jump to extraordinary highs. In fact, in Africa alone, it's been estimated there'll be a shortfall of food supplies that would usually feed 100 million people just because of the absurd cost of fertilizer. Well, guess what? As if it wasn't enough, the global supply of fertilizers is about to shrink, given that Russia is one of the biggest exporters of fertilizer for the rest of the world. Because of the relationship between energy and agricultural prices, the conflict will impact agriculture all across the globe and contribute to farmers' decisions about what and how much to grow. Russia is one of the largest producers of the three major groups of fertilizers: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Physical supply cuts could further inflate fertilizer prices, and even before this crisis, some types of fertilizer had already quadrupled in price. One industry insider exposed that those new high fertilizer prices will add $200 per acre for growing corn. In 2021, he said, it was roughly $700 to grow an acre. This year, a ballpark is $900 per acre. This will be an additional cost for the row crop farmers, as well as the ranchers, feedlots, and dairy farmers. That's to say, hundreds of thousands of small U.S. farmers simply will not be able to grow corn this year because it will not be profitable due to soaring fertilizer prices. The insider also highlighted that higher animal feed costs also have the potential impact of pinching the beef and pork supply at a time when demand remains high and supply has already dropped because of issues like drought last summer, an increase in viral pig diseases like porcine reproductive and respiratory syndrome, and even the bottlenecks at meat processing facilities at the beginning of the virus health crisis that left some cattle and pig farmers without a place to have their animals slaughtered. The bottleneck caused the big meat companies to pay less per animal to ranchers, which in turn caused many of them to shrink their herds. We should definitely start bracing for paying much more expensive prices for meat and pork in the coming weeks. All of those high costs for energy, for commodities, and those higher costs for fertilizer will in turn be passed along to restaurants, retailers, and of course, us consumers. It won't be surprising if 6 months down the road, we start to see food riots emerging all over the globe. On the other hand, the global energy crisis is also causing some alarming distortions on the market. A recent article released by USA Today pointed out that Russia accounts for more than 30% of Europe's gas for home heating, industry, and generating electricity, and other potential supply sources are not adequately prepared to bridge the gap if Russian gas is curtailed. And that's according to Rystad Energy analysts. In an attempt to ease the effects of the energy crunch Europe is facing, the United States is exporting large amounts of liquefied natural gas, but the costs to do so are very elevated. And since our domestic supply of natural gas is getting smaller, prices in the United States are currently 60% higher than a year ago, and will continue to go higher, according to Rystad. The same goes for propane, coal, and electricity. And the latest increase in the price of oil, going over $100 per barrel, means that soon we will be paying $5 to $7 for a gallon of gasoline. In a recent opinion piece, analyst Mike Adams summed up the current state of affairs and shared some very gloomy forecasts about the near future. We predict food riots in United States cities as food inflation makes even basic sustenance unaffordable to low-wage workers. The working poor are headed toward a massive uprising as both fuel and food become nearly impossible to afford, even at $12 to $15 hourly wages. At some point soon, just driving to work makes no economic sense, because the gas will be nearly as expensive as what people earn at work. Adams also warned that the consequences of the global conflict could lead us to the total collapse of our society and our economy. The combination of global strife, rising food and fuel prices, rampant inflation, and currency debasement are likely to create a total collapse of the world we once knew. Forget about affordable food or just-in-time delivery of anything. The world is about to become extremely inconvenient, expensive, and broken. The supply chain disruptions will get far worse from here forward, and robbery is going to absolutely skyrocket out of sheer desperation. Expect to see flash mobs looting grocery stores in broad daylight. Carjackings will skyrocket. Home invasions will become commonplace, even outside the cities as looting gangs hit suburbs, he wrote. This is the most insane societal environment that we will soon find ourselves living in. Whatever preparedness actions you have taken so far, double them, Adams emphasized. Get ready for the possibility of needing to survive many months without food, without electricity, without banking, without fuel, without emergency medicine, and without the rule of law. What we all experienced in 2020 to 2021 was just the warm-up round compared to what's coming next. This is not a drill. We're moving toward a horrifying breakdown of our basic systems. That is going to make our entire society fall into pieces, shaking our lives to the core as it happens. Thank you for watching. If you found our videos informative, we strongly recommend 7-Year Apocalypse, the latest book of the economist and financial expert Michael Snyder. In the meantime, don't forget to share this video with friends and family. Do it now, and share your thoughts in the comments section down below. We look forward to reading your feedback.